Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast that so hated all of our enemies teamed up to take us out because this week we watched the Pandorica opens in the Big Bang.
Written by Stephen Moffat, I think.
Directed by Toby Haynes.
And aired on June 19th and 26th, 2010.
Wow, the second episode was aired one day before my birthday. Fun fact. I guess if you were a listener, you would know when I was born, so you know now, I suppose.
Yeah.
Production for this episode was actually pretty interesting, in my opinion. Both the writing and the filming. Largely because a lot of this was actually done kind of spread out over the season.
Well, because of the nature of like what happens near the end.
Yeah, well, also the nature of how it starts. Stephen Moffat started writing this pretty early in the season and thought he had a lot more time than he actually did, because what happened was he wanted to film this last in what would have been filming Block 7. Apparently, the studio that did the effects work, who I'm completely forgetting the name right now, but it'll be in the show notes, wouldn't have enough time to finish the effects if they filmed it that late compared to when it aired, so they actually had to bump it up to Block 6, which apparently took like a month or 2 months off of Stephen Moffat's writing time. So he actually had to rather hurriedly finish this script.
And, I like this episode, but once I read that, things started making sense, as to why these two episodes are the way they are, and how things don't really all add up.
They don't really all add up, and
in a sense that it's not that satisfying.
Tiny bit spoilerish, not too much though, is that this episode still poses a lot of questions and leaves some questions unanswered, and I think why this episode somewhat frustrates me is that those questions actually never get answered.
Well, I'm fine with unanswered questions. In fact, sometimes, most of the time, prefer unanswered questions. I'm
okay with that in instances where it's like clearly meant for them to be unanswered. But this episode feels like those questions were left unanswered because Moffat or someone was going to return to them at a later date, like they were building something.
Yeah.
But then we never actually see them.
Yeah.
The one big one, this is a little spoilerish, the question of who blew up the TARDIS and why is actually never explicitly answered on the show, and that really bothers me, especially since the whole crux of the season was like building up to this episode, like we're going to find out why the TARDIS blows up.
Right, even bigger than that to me is what started the cracks in time.
I think the cracks in time, I think it's pretty much stated that those started by the TARDIS blowing up. Because the cracks seal when the TARDIS doesn't blow up anymore. And also the Doctor explicitly says, the cracks are from the TARDIS blowing up.
Oh, well, I guess I missed
also,
that.
in The Hungry Earth and the Cold Blood, he says the cracks are from an explosion, and where there's an explosion, there's shrapnel.
All right, sure.
But anyway, production-wise, Moffat was like, shit. And he kind of planned out, he saw how Russell T brought in all these plot threads from the whole season, and he wanted to do something similar. And so
but on an even larger scale.
Yeah, on a larger scale, and he's going to keep going bigger and bigger until we get the point where it's...
I'm okay with going bigger than this.
No, yeah, me too, but, like I said, when we started the Moffat era, there is a point where Moffat realizes he's gone too far.
You can go bigger than this, but maybe just slow it down a little bit, because this was really fast.
You can definitely go bigger than this. You can go quite a bit bigger than this. And Stephen Moffat will go quite a bit bigger than this.
In fact, I think the Russell T era went bigger than this, with the planets disappearing.
Right. Well, I think
this.
You have to define what kind of scale you're working on. I think, like, time-wise, I think Moffat goes way bigger than Russell T ever did. I think spatially, Russell T went bigger with the planets. But again, Moffat was like, well, we got to do something from the whole season. And he brings in this whole opening sequence, which I thought was really cool. Actually, it's my favorite part of the episode, this opening sequence that ties in a lot of episodes from the season that you wouldn't expect to be tied together.
Through a painting.
And then, those sequences, like moments in those sequences were filmed when they filmed those episodes, which is why the filming of this was actually kind of not just contained to Block 6. The section with Liz 10 was filmed when they filmed Beast Below. There's a section with Van Gogh and Churchill and Bracewell. Those were all filmed during those scenes. Interestingly, the shot of Bracewell walking through the corridor was filmed at a different location than the one of him in the bunker with Churchill. The one in the room with Churchill was filmed in the bunker in Swansea, where they filmed the episode, but the corridor was filmed like at a different location that the BBC just took the guy who played Bracewell to and filmed it. The river song scenes, those were filmed as part of this, actually. Interestingly, there's a shot where River Song talks with Liz 10, which we'll talk about in a second. Those were filmed at different times. The Liz 10 side of the conversation was shot when they had her during Beats Below, and then the River side was shot during this episode. So those two sides of the conversation were actually shot at different times. Conveniently, they're never actually shown on screen together. They're just talking to each other, so it's shot, anti-shot kind of thing. And then they filmed basically the rest of the episode pretty much not in order, but they filmed the Pandorica stuff. They filmed a lot of the Stonehenge stuff apparently on location in Stonehenge.
They built a fake Stonehenge.
Yeah, they built a fake Stonehenge.
Because they weren't allowed to do all they wanted to with the real one.
You're not allowed to stand on the rocks at Stonehenge.
I'm sure that, it stopped them, but I'm sure it hasn't stopped a lot of people.
Depends how much respect you have for it, I guess. They designed the Pandorica set, the Underhenge, they call it, to evoke kind of the Raiders of the Lost Ark feeling.
Yeah, it was designed to be the biggest Doctor Who set ever, and it was.
Yeah,
up until that point.
To this point.
It doesn't you don't get that on screen. It doesn't look that way on screen.
It looks very small and kind of cramped,
which
is probably the point.
But then why would they be it has to be the biggest one?
Well, I think when you actually look at all the shots we get out of that set, you realize it's actually pretty big because we go around all these columns. There's that other room where Amy gets knocked out. It actually is quite a big set when you start to consider actually what happens in the scene and how much we actually see. I think at first glance it looks pretty small because it's supposed to feel like a cramped tomb, like Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark style. And then, it was in the can, and then they filmed... I don't remember what they filmed as part of Block 7. What did they film after this, production-wise? I'm going to just check on that. I don't know. It might come back to me later.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Anyway, that's about actually all the production stuff for this episode. The real interesting part to me was how Moffat had to basically speed it up, and they filmed all these bits and pieces throughout the whole season. I really like this opening sequence. It's a nice segue. I really like this opening sequence because it actually does tie together the whole season pretty well, in my opinion.
Right, and like we've been mentioning for the past 11 weeks or 12
10,
weeks.
I think.
This season's overarching sort of thing is done a lot more blatantly than it ever has been done before.
But I think it works out.
Yeah, I think this
really
works out.
Well.
And I think this is one of the best, maybe the resolution to it isn't the greatest, but I think this is probably one of the best of the overarching plot lines.
I think so too. This two-parter, there are a lot of things I really like about this, but there are also a lot of things that I kind of really dislike about this. But the resolution to the overarching plot is definitely one of the things that I like. Especially this opening scene, which we should explain what actually happens. As we see Vincent van Gogh, and he's screaming in pain, and the doctor, not the doctor, but the doctor who's helping, his doctor, and a nursemaid kind of look at this painting and they're wow, it's worse than his usual stuff. And then we kind of see the painting being carried by Bracewell, and he takes it to Churchill, and he's look, it's a message for the doctor. Obviously, you need to get it to him. Churchill tries to call the doctor, but the doctor's not picking up, so it reroutes the call to River, who's currently she's in the prison facility that she was in before Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, the Storm Cage facility, which River mentions in Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, is where she was being held.
Yep.
Because for her, this is set before that. If you remember, in Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, she tells the doctor, I'll see you again when the Pandorica opens.
Right. River knows she and the doctor are making their way through this,
Yeah.
She knows.
That's one of the things that to me is not a like or dislike. It's just questionable. she knows, but she acts really torn up. The doctor's flying into the... She doesn't actually know, I guess, that the doctor makes it through this. She knows that she makes it through this.
Yeah, that's true.
Then we see her break out of the prison cell with hallucinogenic lipstick. From there, we see her steal a painting.
I like how a lot of this is done because, you get the part with the hallucinogenic lipstick, and then you see later on that that's done on the Roman guide, and you can put two and two
Right.
together. You're like, oh, okay, that's how she infiltrated the camp. Well, I
Right.
think actually a lot later, like maybe 20, 25 minutes later, she's like, I used the lipstick on the Romans. I was like, all right,
Just
sure.
in case you missed it, I guess. Because then she steals the painting from the Royal Archive where it's being stored, watched over by Liz 10, who looks at the painting and says, yeah, you need to take this to the doctor. Then we finally cut to the doctor and Amy. Amy's playing with the ring, but the doctor doesn't know still that she has the ring. And he's like, we're going to go to the oldest planet in the universe, the oldest graffiti in the universe. And they go...
And it's the first written... the first writing in the universe.
Right.
Which is really interesting. I wish they had a whole episode about the first writing in the universe.
Yeah, I think that could have been really cool because the doctor's like, this is the first writing in the universe and no one's ever translated it, but the TARDIS can translate anything. Which isn't entirely true, as we know from Satan Pit, and Impossible Planet, because there was that language the TARDIS couldn't translate. The doctor's like, wow, this language must be older than the universe.
Yeah, maybe it can't translate languages older than the universe, just the oldest language in the universe, or it's just the 11th Doctor playing himself up again.
But they get there and it says, hello, sweetie. The doctor's like, damn it.
Yeah, it was kind of underwhelming. Like, this is such a cool concept that you can do more with. Not that
But you kind of see it coming.
Yeah, you do.
Because they did it in this season, in Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, where they find that home box and it's graffitied and it's like, it says, hello, sweetie.
I don't even remember that, actually, but
that's how they find out that River's involved in that whole thing. Because they watch the playback and she gives him coordinates and he teleports there and she flies out of the airlock.
Museum. We're on to you, Stephen.
And then we get the title sequence finally, legitimately like 8 to 10 minutes into the episode. I checked the time code and remember it being like 8 to 10 minutes into the episode.
Huh. Well, the Doctor and Amy are in ancient Rome. Britain, it's part of Rome at this point. And the Doctor's like, I'm going to take you to the greatest war machine in human history. So he takes her to the war machines. No.
He takes her to the Roman army, which the Doctor later says is the greatest warrior force in the universe. And I was like, really?
It's really not. It's not even the greatest on Earth.
Especially since the Sontarans are like there. Besides the point.
Like the fossilized Dalek in this episode.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
We're going to get there. The Doctor goes down to the camp and he talks with River. And River shows him the painting.
River's impersonating Cleopatra. Best plan ever.
It works pretty well for a while. But then the Doctor sees the painting, and we finally see the painting, and it's a painting of the TARDIS exploding, done in Van Gogh's signature style. And there was, 2 weeks ago when we did Vincent and the Doctor, Keon talked about, at the end of the episode, how the episode seems to imply that paintings capture a moment in time and conflate paintings with photography. And when I was editing the episode, I thought of something that I actually wanted to say, but I decided to save it to this week because I thought it would fit better here, because I think, in my opinion, I think actually paintings can capture a moment in time, but not necessarily, one, as quick a moment as a picture, and two, I think it's not the moment as it happens. It's more of an interpretation of the moment, or the moment as seen through the lens of someone. And kind of how I came to this was I was thinking about, I read this paper recently about how these people wrote this computer program, a neural network, that was able to separate the painting style from a painting and the content of the painting from each other. And they used it to apply the painting style of like a painting to a photograph, which is cool. But the point of the paper was that they basically constructed a neural network to do what a human eye does. And they basically talked about how humans, when they look at a painting, you're able to separate the content of the painting from the style of the painting. When you look at a Van Gogh painting, you're like, oh, that's a painting of sunflowers, but it's a painting done by Van Gogh, right? You look at a Picasso and it's like, well, that's obviously a painting of a lady, but it's a painting done by Picasso. And it's interesting because I think photographs, don't really have that so much. And I think that's why photographs are more of a moment in time thing than a painting is, because a photograph, you're not going to look at a photo and be like, you'll be like, oh, this is a photo of a house, but you're not going to be like, oh, that photo was taken by Matthew Rolston.
I somewhat disagree with that, and I somewhat agree, because I think, and obviously I haven't read the paper, so this is just my opinion based on what you just said, but different photographers, I think, definitely have their own style, and some of those are very distinctive. I just think photographs are a lot less abstracted than paintings. Like, even a realist painting is going to be an abstraction, right? And photos in some ways are too, but like less so.
But that's what I'm saying. I think you're saying what I'm saying just in a different way, because I'm saying that that a painting is more so through the lens of how one person sees this moment or this object than a photograph is. Obviously, photographers have a style, but I think it's less likely that when you look at a photo, you're going to pick out who took the photo than it is for a painting. I just think that for a painting, it's more obviously done by someone than a photo is.
Well, if you're gonna name names if they're famous, but like you can look at photographs also and say like, yeah, that was taken by whoever it was. If they're famous enough and they have a distinct enough style.
I'm saying it's just less likely.
I agree with that.
But that's just kind of my thoughts on it. And the reason why I wanted to put this here is because this painting that Van Gogh has done is very obviously, I think, supposed to be a moment in time. River says the painting's titled The Pandorica Opens, and it's a painting of the TARDIS exploding, which is obviously some moment. When the Pandorica opens, the TARDIS explodes. At least that's kind of, it's painted in the way that Van Gogh sees it. He's seeing these visions pouring through the crack or pouring through time that he can see, because he can see things that people don't typically see.
Right. It is like a time loop type thing.
Kind of.
Like the reboot's version of fire. Fire. Fire.
This episode deals with time travel more explicitly than I think has ever been done on this show before.
Yeah, or just like more than has ever been done on the show before, really. And I like all this stuff. Don't get me wrong. I actually liked a lot of the time travel stuff where it's like, well, you had the mop. And he's like, oh, gotta go back with the mop. I like that, but like at the same time, it's a little much, right? Like a lot of it just seemed like it was there just for the sake of like complicating things and just having these plot like things that are just there.
Well, that is the plot of this episode is time travel. Like, you can sum up the plot of this episode in 2 words: it's time travel. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention here. We've got to mention River finds a vortex manipulator from a guy named Dorium. I only name him because he does reappear. And we do learn his name later on. He mentions that the vortex manipulator came off the arm of a handsome time agent. Some people theorize that that's supposed to be a reference to Jack, Captain Jack.
Yeah.
There's also a little tiny Easter egg that only diehard fans would ever know what it meant, but in the Hello Sweetie graffiti right underneath it, there's a whole bunch of Greek characters, and the first 2, if you didn't notice, are Theta Sigma.
Oh, wow.
Just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was actually pretty cool.
Well, there are a lot of minor throwbacks in this, like when I forget who does this, but someone lists off the names of like all these villains. And
I wrote down a couple of them that I thought were questionable, like the Chelonians, who appeared in Gareth Roberts' novels, the Zygons,
the Pteroleptals, the freaking Pteroleptals are in there.
The Atraxi. They also mentioned the Slovene,
the Draconians from the Planet of the Daleks, and
of course the Daleks and the Cybermen are mentioned as well, and the Autons, and the Roboform is apparently mentioned. So, this is Stephen Moffat doing the fanboy thing where he's like, what if we saw everyone? Which I can appreciate as someone who's been like, what if we saw everyone and they all teamed up against the Doctor? But at the same time, I think it's something that only really works once, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to save this for the end, but I think since we're talking about it now, I'll just bring it up now. It feels like a lot of the writers who come to the new series are like Doctor Who fanboys, basically, right? Let's not beat around the bush. They're people who grew up with the show and are just fanboys. And a lot of the like speeches in the show and the like soliloquies and stuff like that, or monologues or whatever, like the one with Amy at the end of this, really like speak to that, right? They're like, at the end where Amy is saying like, oh yeah, I grew up with the Doctor and I knew like in my heart he was real and stuff like that. And I'm just like, all right.
Well, like, some of them are surrogates for the audience or the showrunner.
Rose Tyler, Russell T, like.
Well, I mean, we're going to get a character in Moffat's era named Osgood who is like actually a Doctor Who fan because she's like a fan of the Doctor. She's got like a long scarf because she works for UNIT, so she knows what the Fourth Doctor looks like. And it's actually kind of cringeworthy. A lot of people really like Osgood, but I just watch Osgood and I kind of just cringe because I'm like, I know this is Moffat putting himself in this story. We're going to get there. I have thoughts on Osgood.
I didn't even know this person existed. His character, I guess. I don't want to call a character a person.
She comes back and she's wearing a jumper that looks exactly like the Seventh Doctor's jumper. She's wearing a bow tie in the one. She's like, I'm a big fan of yours when she meets the Doctor. It's like, really like... But in this, I think it's okay. Like in this story, I think it works out.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of this episode, as in this episode of Trust Your Doctor, is us like railing into this episode, but like... We coming back and saying, like, yeah, we like the episode.
Well, that's the thing. I like a lot of this episode, but I dislike quite a bit of this episode too. These episodes, sure. I guess.
Yeah.
Overall, I like it. Like
I think
overall,
the first one is pretty not flawless, but I don't think it's as blameworthy as the second one because it's more setting up the mystery, really.
Well, I think the first one's only fault, in my opinion, is that it drags a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, the Doctor decides to go to the Pandorica, which is apparently underneath Stonehenge. And they go, and Amy's like, well, why does it look old? And the Doctor's like, it's always looked old. Nobody actually knows how long the Pandorica's been here.
Right, and Amy mentions how, like, Pandora's Box was her favorite story, and this reminds her of it.
Right.
And how the Romans, she mentioned at the beginning of the episode, too, how the Romans were, like, her favorite era or whatever. And interestingly enough, Karen Gillan's first Doctor Who appearance was in
Fires of
Pompeii.
In Rome.
Yep.
The Empire of Rome, not the City of Rome. Confusing.
Yeah, she played one of the Sisterhood of the Flame knockoff
Peter Capaldi was in that episode too.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. I still think they're going to come back like out of left field and be like, that was actually the Doctor and he was mind controlled or something like that. Wouldn't put it past the Moffat era to do that. Seems like something that would happen, you know?
They do mention it, that he looks like the Doctor. Like, they don't just brush it aside. The other thing is that there's another character played by Peter Capaldi in the larger Doctor Who universe. In Torchwood, he plays a character. And Russell T kind of just brushed that under the rug. Although he said, like, out of universe, he believed that this character was a descendant of Caecilius, and that was how he explained it, but...
That stuff doesn't bother me too much. I know there are people out there who are like, I just didn't watch the Capaldi era because of that. I mean, I've seen people say that, legitimately.
That's just absurd to me.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately absurd.
And I was like, did you not watch
Colin Baker either? Yeah.
I don't know.
That's just weird. Are they just upset that, like, they played two roles? That's like how acting works, though.
Yeah, that was my understanding of their not argument for it, but their disdain for it.
Explanation?
Yeah, their explanation is that they didn't like that he had appeared in the show before.
What? Fans, Doctor Who fans. Well, so the Doctor goes to find the Pandorica, and he does. He finds the Pandorica, and we get some lines from him and River about the Pandorica, where they talk about how it was a legend or a myth that was designed to contain the most evil being in the universe. And it was designed to be completely unescapable.
I thought it was going to be like Davros or something, honestly, especially once you hear the Dalek voices. I was like, all right, is it going to be Davros? Right, or is it going to be Omega? Like, there are actually a lot of similarities between this and the Three Doctors.
Right. Yeah, because the universe is ending, and
they go to this weird.
They go to a weird
area, and they're
alternate dimension.
There's someone trapped in like this indestructible thing or whatever.
I'm surprised, honestly, that Omega didn't make an appearance during that fleet. Like, I feel like Stephen Moffat is a big fan of Doctor Who. That's someone he would have brought back. This is where we actually hear everybody showing up, because River reveals that Stonehenge is basically an antenna, and the Doctor feedbacks the signal so that they can hear all the ships that are out there, and they hear Daleks, and the Doctor's like, okay, Daleks, we can deal with Daleks. And then River goes to another stone plinth and it's Cybermen. And the doc's like, okay, Daleks and Cybermen, it was still handleable. And then River's like, no.
Then they hear the pteroleptals, and then they just, they can't deal with it. No, I'm just kidding.
Then River lists off all these other aliens, the Zygons, the Autons, the pteroleptals.
The Crotons, the Dominators. No, I'm just kidding.
I think she does mention the Crotons, doesn't she?
Really? I don't know. Definitely doesn't mention the Dominators.
No, not the Dominators. Who the hell would remember the Dominators first off?
Me, apparently.
Okay, besides you. Wasn't the Dominators that story where like Zoe and the doctor took IQ tests and Zoe scored higher and the doctor was like really pissy at her about it?
Oh, I don't remember any of that. I just remember the janky costumes and what they kind of looked like. There's just guys in like almost turtle suits.
I'm sure that was the Dominators. That might have been the Crotons, actually.
I don't remember.
They brought the Crotons back in the audios to face off against the Sixth Doctor. They brought the Drashigs back.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah, I mean, you texted me about that. Like, the Drashigs are coming back.
I mean, Big Finish has done it again, boys.
Even though the Drashigs were only shown in the Carnival of Monsters as, like, miniatures of themselves.
And we didn't hear them speak, and they were literally just dish rags. Oh, well. So then the doctor tells River to go back to the platoon to gather up some soldiers, and she goes back.
The Jadoon platoon? The
Jadoon are here too.
The Jadoon are here as the doctor's enemies, which they never really were. They were just... They opposed the doctor, but they were doing their job.
The Jadoon are intergalactic police, and I guess they've been convinced to join this axis of evil because they believe the doctor's evil or whatever.
Yeah.
I actually saw a pretty good Reddit post the other day that outlines like quite a few of the problems that I have on this episode pretty succinctly. I don't know if I'll link it in the comments because it's Reddit.
You can,
but I might. But we're not quite there yet, so I'll bring that up when we get there. But River goes to the platoon and she's confronted by the actual leader of the platoon, and he's like, well, I thought we were hosting Cleopatra, but it turns out it was just you. But then he goes over to talk to a mysterious figure in the shadows, and he comes back and is like, well, you got your platoon. And they go to Stonehenge, and Amy and the doctor are downstairs. And there's a Cyberman arm in there, and it starts attacking them, and then the doctor is able to grab it, but then the head starts attacking Amy. This is actually a pretty creepy scene because the head opens up and the skull of the former Cyberman falls out.
Right.
And the Cyberman starts trying to convert Amy. It says, like, you will be assimilated. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's what the Borg say. A Borg in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Their actual...
Even I knew who they were, probably because you've mentioned them like 5 times.
Well, their famous line is, you will be assimilated, resistance is futile, which is what the Cyberman says in this. The Borg are partially inspired by the Cybermen. So it's interesting that now the Cybermen are taking things from the Borg, kind of a... symbiotic creative relationship, I think, there. The Borg are by far the most famous villains in Star Trek, I think.
Yeah, kind of a student has surpassed the master type situation, if you will. Not really, actually. But the body also, comes out from behind a corner and like, surprise, I was here the whole time. Now, I read that the guy playing this Cyberman was an actual one-armed guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read that too, which is why they were able to realize this without using like complicated prosthetics or CG or effects.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And
it's really effective because it's freaking terrifying. The Cyberman's trying to convert Amy and the doctor's knocked out because he gets knocked out by the arm. The arm eventually reattaches to the body and starts trying to attack Amy, but she's able to hide behind a door. She hears like a fight on the other side of the door, and we see a sword get speared through the door, and the door opens and the Cyberman's been speared into the door. And it's revealed that this Roman is Rory.
Who else but Rory?
Well, so how surprised were you that Rory...
I knew he was coming back in this. And
okay, but did you know that he was going to be this guy, the Centurion? Well, like, what I'm asking is how effective was the reveal, basically?
I mean, I didn't go like, whoa, it's Rory! I mean, because one, I knew he was coming back in this, and I knew he was like an Auton, kind of. I knew that. Those are the two things I knew. I didn't know he was this Roman soldier, Centurion, I guess.
Or that he waited 2,000 years for Amy.
I didn't know that.
It's kind of part of the reason why he starts being awesome. I think the reveal is decent.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have said if I hadn't known any of that, Like,
I mean, I like that we see the reveal from Amy's point of view, because Rory was the most important person to Amy, or at least Amy was the most important person to Rory for sure.
Until the doctor shows up.
I like that we see the reveal from the point of view of Amy, and she just goes, "Who are you?" And I think that's more effective than the actual reveal that it's Rory. This reveal that she doesn't recognize him and still doesn't know who he is. There's a moment that I want to mention that I made a note of here when Amy chucks the ring back to the doctor, and she's like, "So you proposing to someone soon?" And he's like, "No, this belonged to a friend of mine." And I just thought it was interesting that he referred to Rory as a friend, even though they were butting heads. For a lot of Rory's time on screen, they were butting heads, but the doctor still considers him a good friend. An old friend. I think he explicitly says a friend of mine or an old friend of mine.
Yeah, and you know what I just realized? Kind of a digression, but also something they brought up in Vampires of Venice, which had Rory in it, is that, they don't really touch on, ever again in this season at least, the thing of, the doctor, really changing people and,
right.
weaponizing them.
Because that was something that Vampires of Venice touched on, more explicitly than ever before. Through Rory, he was like, you make them want to impress you, and that's why this is dangerous.
Right. Maybe there's something going on here with this, with Rory being a soldier now. I don't know. Stephen
Moffat really likes his soldier imagery with the Doctor and playing the Doctor up as a soldier.
Just weird, actually.
Series 8 does it to such an irritating extent that it's part of the reason why I really detest a certain character in Series 8.
But that's really weird, though, because the Doctor has always been anti-violence, anti-gun, anti-weapons, whatever.
And they kind of play it up not necessarily in this season so much, but next season when we kind of see the fallout of Amy and Rory traveling with the Doctor and the fallout of the events of the story, we start to see Moffat starts to really play up the soldier aspect. I don't want to look too far ahead, but I think next season, and I think the resolution to the story, because I think this story is kind of a story that needs to be seen in context, suffers because next season gets split in two, and I think because of that, really dealing with the repercussions of some of the things introduced in this story gets a little shaky. Things like who blew up the TARDIS, what do they mean when silence will fall? That's something that we also don't really get the resolution to in this story. The Doctor makes this grand speech, which is... a lot of people really like this speech for some reason. I'm really kind of indifferent to it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it's just a typical 11th Doctor thing, right? He's very full of himself.
He's very full of himself. I feel like Matt Smith's acting kind of falters a little bit in this scene. It's kind of what it felt like. I just felt like maybe he wasn't acting up to the speech. But really, I'm just indifferent to it. A lot of people really like it. Some people take it to conventions and ask other Doctor actors to read it.
Wow, that's kind of insulting in a way.
A little bit. Some... they've done it with other speeches too, and sometimes it really works. I don't remember, there was one that Paul McGann read, and it worked way better from him than it did from on the show, but I don't remember which one it was now. It's a thing people do. The Doctor Who fandom is weird.
I mean, I still think it's insulting, but I can see that working if you ask a newer Doctor to recite a speech from an older Doctor, this person set this precedent as the Doctor, and we want to see how you not live up to it, but how you interpret it.
Right.
But the other way around kind of rubs me the wrong way.
I think it's sort of a fan wank thing where they're like, man, I really wish this Doctor had been in this story, so let's get the Doctor to read the...
But then you also have to think, if that Doctor had been in this story, would he have done the same thing? And the answer for pretty much all the Doctors so far is no, they wouldn't have done this.
There's a moment now where Amy and Rory are kind of chilling outside. River's trying to pilot the TARDIS to Stonehenge because the Doctor needs his tools to open the Pandorica. A little bit of a continuity error with episode 2 when the Doctor can just open it with the sonic, but anyway...
Does he know he can, or does Rory tell him? I don't remember.
Rory tells him because Rory hears from the Doctor.
Yeah, it's. This episode has 5 of these things that are just impossible loops.
But in piloting the TARDIS gets drawn to June 26th, 2010, which is when the Doctor knows it will blow up. And River calls him and is like, look, I don't know what to do. I can't get out of the TARDIS. And the Doctor's like, you just need to get away from that time and place and get out of the TARDIS. The engine will shut down if you just leave. And River tries to leave.
But there's a big piece of stone blocking her exit.
Well, so this is there's like a three-way intercut here between all three characters getting really kind of decimated. River's trying to open the TARDIS door. The Doctor gets confronted by this whole group of people and they throw him in the Pandorica. And Amy gets shot by Rory because it's revealed that all the Centurions are Autons.
Right, this entire thing, it's revealed, is just a big setup for the Doctor by this alliance of his enemies. So the Romans were they were Autons, basically, or like something similar to Autons.
They were Autons. The Doctor says, oh, you're Autons controlled by the Nestine. That makes sense. Daleks, I don't know why you're here. Wow, Sontarans, that's weird. He says something like that, but he explicitly mentions the Nestine controlling the Romans. So.
These were all recreated from Amy's favorite childhood things like Romans and Pandora's box.
Which River mentions to the Doctor because she lands in Amy's room and she looks at the book and she sees about Pandora's box and the Romans and she calls the Doctor and tells him that the whole thing's a setup.
Right.
And that's when he goes,
But anyway, it ends with him, getting locked in the Pandorica.
And he's trying to tell them he's the only one who can save the universe, but they all think he's the one who's destroying the universe. Which, in a way, isn't a bad assumption because the TARDIS is the one that blows up and destroys the universe and it belongs to the Doctor. But the Doctor tells them, hey, I'm not the only one who can pilot the TARDIS. I taught River how to do it. And they're like, they don't believe him.
Well, also, a lot of these groups aren't just focused on this one event. I don't remember who says this, but someone is like, I think it's the Jadoon. They're like, our calculations have shown that if we don't lock you up right now, eventually you'll destroy the universe.
Yeah. One of my problems with this, why they don't just kill him?
Maybe they couldn't come to an agreement. Maybe the Daleks were like, yeah, let's just kill him. And the Cybermen were like, yeah, let's kill him. And some other group was holding out, the Jadoon maybe.
I guess.
Which you wonder, do the Daleks really, negotiate?
Yeah, would the Daleks would the Cybermen negotiate? The Daleks are the Doctor's biggest enemy. They would want to kill him first chance. That's my one real big issue with this episode.
This is the new paradigm. So, you never know.
The Cybermen are still there.
Yeah, no.
My one big issue is, why do they lock him up instead of just killing him? If he's going to destroy the universe at some point, wouldn't it be better to just remove him completely from the equation? I don't see the benefit in locking him up versus killing him.
It's cool.
The real reason is because Stephen Moffat said so. But
I do think this is this is an effective thing, right? The Pandorica is set up it's holding the greatest criminal ever, this really dangerous person or whatever, and then it opens and it's empty and they put the Doctor in there. That's cool.
I think the idea of locking the Doctor up, I think it's a really good conceit. I think where it falls apart is that we meet the Doctor's most hated villains and they're like, we're going to lock you up instead of killing you. I think maybe if we'd seen, this could have been interesting. I don't know if it would have even worked, but an alien species is controlling this all behind the scenes, sort of like a Jadoon, but intergalactic police. So their whole point is to lock people up instead of killing them. Maybe that would have made it better. I don't know. I'm just really bothered by the fact that the Daleks have the Doctor at gunpoint, defenseless, held down by Autons, and
it could have just been one group or something. Maybe not even a throwback, just some group that wants the Doctor locked up, or just some alliance without the frickin' Daleks. It didn't have to be this entire even fan service type thing with all of them.
If it hadn't featured the Daleks and the Cybermen, I could have understood more why they lock him up instead of killing him, because the Autons, the Doctor's defeated twice, 3 times maybe. The Zygons that we've only seen on the show once. The Silurians are there somehow.
Really? The Silurians were there?
Yeah, you see them in that slow-mo shot when he's getting thrown in the Pandorica.
Huh.
It's but the Daleks and the Cybermen, their goal every time was to kill the Doctor. But these other species were they were looking for a home or they were trying to get somewhere else, and the Doctor just happened to stop them. And I can understand.
The Doctor just happened to wipe them all out.
I would understand more, I guess, is my point, why they would lock him up instead of kill him.
Yeah, sure. I don't even think just from the perspective that this is all just total fan service, throw in it's all his enemies. It didn't need to be. Come on.
That's just Stephen Moffat.
I hope he doesn't do it again. Oh boy.
My eyes got really wide there. If you didn't, the audio, you wouldn't know.
If you didn't see, no.
So
that's the end of the.
Amy gets shot
Pandorica
as well, by the way, by
episodes,
Rory,
right.
because he's trying to resist the transition back to full Auton.
But
and she gives him the ring, which actually prevents the transition, but only after he shoots her.
Right, and she remembers who he is, obviously. She eventually remembers.
Episode 2 starts also really strongly, I thought. We see Amelia, and it's a universe where the Doctor doesn't exist because the Doctor's locked into Pandorica, right. And the whole universe is blowing up. So she goes to the museum.
Well, we get this scene with like her therapist, right? And she draws this picture with stars, and they sort of scold her for that. And they take her outside, and they're like, "Look up, and what do you see? Are there any stars?" And she goes, "No." And, way to just stifle a kid's imagination, right?
Yeah, you got to stomp that out when they're young. Make them into perfect worker drones from the age of 3. I hope my kids never hear me saying that.
There's a lot of things we've said over the years that can really be taken out of context.
If I ever run for office, or if you ever run for the office, this podcast is going to be our downfall.
Anyway, we see Amy's aunt for the first time.
Right.
Aunt, not Lavinia, Aunt. What if it was just Aunt Lavinia?
Well, that would be a twist.
What if she was Sarah Jane's cousin the entire time?
I don't remember her name.
Was Aunt Lavinia a biological aunt of Sarah Jane, or was she just like a caretaker?
I thought she was just a caretaker, but I don't know.
I don't remember.
I don't know if they ever said. But Amelia gets like a brochure for the museum.
Someone just drops in the mail chute at like 11 at night.
And it says, "Come along, Pond," and it's pointing at the Pandorica. So they go to the museum and they see the Pandorica, and there's a sticky note on it that says, "Wait around, Pond," or something like that.
Yeah. Don't forget, someone just grabs her drink out of her hand.
Well, we know who that is.
I didn't know who it was like in the first instance of it. I was like, what the heck just happened there? Like, I knew it was going to come back in some way.
Well, yeah, because they focused on it a lot.
But at the same time, I was hoping it was just going to be like, just some jerk from the crowd just grabbed her drink.
Some jerk just grabbed a kid's drink? Jesus.
It's like taking candy from a baby, except
literally
it's a drink from a child who's not totally a baby, right? She's maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, up around there. So she then waits around, and then she touches the Pandorica, and it starts to open. And I really thought the Doctor was going to be inside. Both times I watched this, I completely forgot how this second episode started. Turns out it's not.
No.
It's Amy.
Yeah.
And she says, "Stick around, kid. This is where it gets complicated."
Wait, and this is really good, right? Like the first one, and the Pandorica opens, ended with the Pandorica closing on the Doctor. Mm-hmm. And then it's a good like double take moment, right? You go like, all right, it's going to be the Doctor, whatever. You might not even be paying much attention in that moment. And then you see Amy and you're like, whoa, what's happening here?
She says almost the exact same thing the Doctor says in Amy's Choice. When he wakes up in the other one, he says, "Whoa, this is going to get complicated." Which I just thought was interesting. I just noticed it. I also wrote down, what did Richard Dawkins do with a question mark? Because
he joined a star cult or something, like or started one.
What's wrong with Richard Dawkins? Because when she's talking about stars, her aunt is like, "I don't like that Richard Dawkins." I was like, what? And I made also a note here. Something else that bothered me was the Blinovitch limitation effect didn't apply here. That was the thing in the classic series. They're like, oh, you can't touch yourself when you go back in time and see yourself because it causes like big problems. And that was also a big thing in the reboot with Father's Day when they went back the second time to watch her father die.
But they even do it with the sonic screwdriver here.
Yeah, but
not for
as
Amy.
Soon as Amy comes out, she touches her younger self, and I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't too bothered by it.
Yeah, I'm not either.
It was just, okay, I wasn't too bothered by it, but I was bothered by it enough to notice it.
Sure.
Especially when they do it with a Sonic later.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just left it out of this episode entirely, and that would have been fine, but, they do it with the freaking sonic screwdriver, so.
But now we get the opening sequence, and then we cut back to Stonehenge. With the title card, this is like 1900 years earlier or whatever.
Yeah.
And the Doctor pops up Rory's holding Amy in his arms, and the doctor shows up with a mop and a fez.
Rory's just like weeping in this field. He's all alone. He's resisted the Nestine consciousness, and he's just like holding Amy in his arms in this empty field, weeping. It's kind of a devastating sight.
Yeah, like a lot. And the doctor shows up and like, don't worry, she's not dead. Well, she kind of is, but not quite. Not yet.
He's wearing a fez, and he has a mop like tucked under his arm.
He's like, we can still save her, so I need you to go open the Pandorica with the sonic screwdriver. Thanks. Bye. And he disappears. And he pops back without the mop, and he says, hey, put the sonic screwdriver in Amy's top pocket when you're done. And then he pops away. And Rory's like, what?
He follows his instructions, though.
He opens the Pandorica, and the doctor's like, how did you get the sonic? And he's like, you gave it to me. And he's like, but I'm holding my sonic here. And he's like, you gave it to me from the future. The doctor's like, weird. Don't know how that's going to work. But then he finds the vortex manipulator that River left behind, because River went to go get the TARDIS, if you remember.
And now we get a glimpse of the Doctor with like unlimited time travel instead of, just the TARDIS. It's not pretty.
It's not pretty. Yeah, let's just say the Doctor should stay away from that. The Doctor pops back in time. Well, forward in time, actually. He tells Rory to come with him. They'll just pop forward to when... Well, they put Amy in the Pandorica, and the Doctor basically says, look, there's a restoring field in the Pandorica that'll keep her alive. You're not allowed to even escape the Pandorica by death. Another questionable choice by this coalition. Not even are they just prisoning the Doctor, they're keeping him alive forever. They throw Amy in.
Maybe their rationale is like, the Doctor, if we ever need the Doctor to save us, we'll pull him out, put him to work, and then lock him right back up again. Kind of almost how the Time Lords, like, quote-unquote, contracted him.
I guess. I'll buy it. Headcanon accepted. The Doctor says they just need a touch of Amy's living DNA, and it'll restore her completely. And Rory's like, well, where are we going to get that? And the Doctor's like, 2,000 years in the future. And he's like, Rory, hop on, just grab my wrist, we'll go in the future. And Rory's like, no, I'm going to stay and I'm going to protect her. And the Doctor's like, literally nothing can get in there, especially nothing Earth's going to invent in the next 2,000 years. And Rory's like, no, I'm going to protect it. And he asks the Doctor to tell him it wouldn't be safer without him it would be safer without him protecting it. Or it wouldn't be safer with him protecting it. That's what he asks. There's actually like a subtle distinction to be made there. And the Doctor says, yeah, it probably would be. So he stays. And I really liked this.
2,000 years.
Well, I really liked this because the Doctor pops forward in time and we see this, we hear this like voiceover documentary thing they have in the museum about the mysterious Centaurian who protected the Pandorica over the years.
Right. And I don't know if you bothered to like pause and read the sign, but there's this plaque that gives you the history of the Pandorica, how it was like stolen by the French and then reclaimed, and it went through all this stuff, and it was kind of cool.
That's nice.
To see, like, Amy was inside it sleeping the entire time, like, unknowing of all of this, I guess.
And, yeah, the last time the Centaurian was seen was during the London Blitz, and he dragged the Pandorica from the flames, apparently, of the warehouse it was stored in.
Pretty sure it can withstand flames, but sure, good on you, Rory, Just making sure, I guess.
He's in love.
With Danger, no, with Amy.
Danger's his middle name.
Rory Danger Williams?
Yeah, Danger Williams.
No, sorry, Rory Danger Pond.
Yep. And a Dalek gets hit by the restoring field and comes to life and starts trying to attack them.
Right, this is a fossilized Dalek, which is really cool.
And immediately gets blasted by Rory. It survives, though, but they kind of run away. And then the Doctor picks up the fez and he picks up the mop, and Rory goes, "Hey, that's how you appeared when you gave me the Sonic." And the Doctor's like, "Oh, 1 second." He pops back in time and he comes back. And he's like, "Oh wait, but how am I going to get the Sonic back?" And he pops back, and that's when he tells Rory to put it in the front pocket. And he pops back to the regular time and he just grabs it out of Amy's pocket. And he's like, "All right, let's go."
Right. So they go up to the roof, and then
and then Amelia's like, "Oh, I need a drink," and then he pops back in time.
Yeah.
Grabs the drink, gives it to her, and then she disappears because time is being erased still. So she gets erased on time.
Right, so they're heading up to the roof, and we get a little bit more about what's been going on in this timeline up on the roof. So all the stars are gone, and there's a sun in the sky, but it's not like the sun as we know it. It's the TARDIS blowing up.
This was something that I was bothered by at the end of episode 1, because like, wouldn't Earth's sun blow up and wipe out the Earth? But then in episode 2, they're like, Earth's sun is gone, but the TARDIS is providing heat for the Earth.
Now here's something I want to bring up, and I normally don't nitpick this kind of stuff, but this one kind of kind of rubbed me the wrong way is that this information is new to Rory. Like, he doesn't know any of it, yet he's been there. He's been guarding this thing the Pandorica, that is, for 2,000 years. And he doesn't know these details?
Yeah, that's kind of the bother. I guess he wouldn't know that it was the TARDIS because he didn't actually know the TARDIS blew up.
He didn't, but he reacts to like, what? There's no stars and stuff? I don't know. It was just weird. And again, I don't nitpick this stuff, but this one kind of bothered me.
Maybe he thought the TARDIS was the sun. And so when he said there's no stars, he was like, wait, so what's that then? I don't know. We
Maybe
do also see the Doctor die. A dying Doctor pops back from the future and he
like rolls down the stairs.
He whispers something in the Doctor's ear and the Doctor stands up and he says, he's dead. And they go up to the roof. That's when they go up to the roof. And the Doctor realizes River's still in the TARDIS, stuck in the time loop because they hear her transmission through the satellite dish. And she's saying, I'm sorry, my love, as she opens the door and there's like a stone block there. She does get the door open by attaching like jumper cables to it and like jumping the door from the TARDIS console. But the Doctor beams up with a vortex manipulator and beams back down with River. And basically they come up with this game plan, which falls apart really quickly under closer inspection. Because the Doctor reveals that the Pandorica has all these molecules in it from the previous universe. Okay, 1, how? It's the same universe. 2, the molecules would have all dispersed as soon as they opened the Pandorica to let Amy out. Those are kind of my 2 big points about that.
I mean, maybe there's still some left inside. I mean, obviously there is, and like the logic of the story, so like, it works. Their plan works.
Moffat like accounted for this because he's like, we could restart the universe with just 1 molecule. Like the Doctor explicitly says that, I guess, to try undermine that criticism, but still.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't even think of any of that. Like, it didn't bother me at all. I just kind of went with it. The rest of the episode is just all right to me. I mean, I liked it. The rest of the
episode is kind of melodramatic. Maybe overly dramatic.
I think it's overly dramatic for like what it is, because this episode I think just needed a little more time in the oven. I mean, it was rushed and stuff and came out prematurely, so a lot of this stuff doesn't fall into place. So maybe like if this had been a little more thought out, or if they'd maybe been able to trim the fat a little bit more, the drama would have worked.
Possibly. I do like some parts of it. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. The Doctor gets in the Pandorica. He flies it up. Well, he gets shot by the Dalek. That's why he's dying. He pops back in time, gets into the Pandorica. River kills the Dalek.
But he's actually not dying. He's just using it as a distraction. He
is dying, but he's not dead.
Yeah, sure. All right.
River kills the Dalek, but there's this interesting scene that, I don't know, I thought it was really interesting, but you know, the Dalek's like, you won't kill me, you're an associate of the Doctor. I think kind of touching on the thing that the Doctor changes people, but the Dalek believes that people who travel with the Doctor won't kill Daleks because that's what the Doctor does. You know, he doesn't kill.
Doctor's killed plenty of Daleks.
Yeah, but he doesn't kill to kill, right? He doesn't kill for the thrill of it. He kills.
He's killed in self-defense as well.
Yeah, self-defense. Basically when it's necessary, right?
Yeah.
But then she's like, check your records. I'm River's song. And he checks his records. Well, the Dalek's like, you'll show mercy because you're a companion of the Doctor. And she's like, check your records. I'm River's song. And he checks. And then the Dalek asks for mercy, which is the first time we've actually heard a Dalek pleading for mercy. And then River's like, say it again. It's like, mercy, mercy. And then we don't see it, but she shows up later. She's like, I killed it.
You ever play that game Mercy as a kid? Where like you...
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't know what that is, you sort of... You use both your hands and arms and you grasp someone else's. You sort of... What's the word? Hold your hands together almost. And then you just try and twist each other's arms until someone says mercy and gives up in pain.
Dumb game. Dumb game.
Yeah, why do that when you just play Bloody Knuckles instead?
Even dumber game. So the Doctor pilots the Pandorica into the thing, but it's revealed that he'll be erased from the universe because he'll be on the other side of the cracks. And then we get the Doctor kind of rewinding through his time stream and reliving events. And there's this really cool moment where it's revealed that a scene we had seen earlier in the season wasn't actually the Doctor. It was the future Doctor rewinding through time. Yep. It's when he's in the spaceship in Flesh and Stone.
Yeah.
and he's telling Amy to remember what he told her as a kid. Now, first time you watch that through the season, you think he's talking about, something he told her in 11th Hour, but it's revealed in this actually that he's telling her to remember something he then tells her after that about how he stole the TARDIS, but it was brand new when he stole it.
Right.
And the reason why he tells her that is because there's an old... It's like a saying for what you have to have at your wedding for it to be successful or good, like in England, not really in the US. Something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. Which, the reason why the Doctor tells her that he stole the TARDIS, or borrowed it, because he always meant to return it, is because the TARDIS is something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue.
Yeah, I didn't know that was like a saying at weddings. I just kind of went with it.
Yeah, that's like an actual saying at weddings, which is kind of why it ties in nicely. It's not something that Moffat just made up for this. Even though at first glance, I can, when I first watched it and I didn't know that, that's just what I assumed it was, like something Moffat made up that was kind of cool and rhyme, but then I found out it's like an actual thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Doctor tells Amy to remember her parents before he goes into the Pandorica, so she'll have parents when the universe gets rebooted, and she does.
Yeah,
they're interesting.
You finally get to see Amy's parents, and they're not how I imagined they would be.
Yeah. The dad is rather short and balding.
The mom is...
tall and not balding. Well, that's how we describe a person.
It's Amy's wedding day.
River drops off her diary, her TARDIS diary,
right,
which is empty because the Doctor doesn't exist. She sees it, and she called Rory earlier the day, and she's like, do you feel like something is missing? He's like, no, nothing's missing. I don't think Rory's an Auton anymore, by the way. I think when the universe rebooted, he became a regular person again.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that.
I don't think it's ever touched upon again.
Rory does say, like, yeah, I do feel something's missing.
And then she's like, are you just saying yes because you're scared of me? And he's like, yes. But then she sees the book, and then she tells her dad to shut up and sit down, and then she remembers the Doctor, and the TARDIS materializes, and the Doctor, she's like, did I surprise you? She's like, yes, totally surprised. That's why I'm already wearing this tux. She's like, that's why you told me to remember what you told me as a kid, because...
Right. And Rory's like, oh, duh, the Doctor. Like, how could we have forgotten about the Doctor? What were we thinking?
The Doctor's like, I just came for the dancing. He does some really dumb dancing. And then they leave. The Doctor gets a call from someone. Spoiler alert, it's not picked up at the beginning of the season. I'm going to tell you what Stephen Moffat told everyone before the next season aired, because I didn't know he had said this before the season aired, and I want to know what your thoughts are going to be. But he told everyone, he said one of the main characters is going to die in the first 10 minutes of the first episode of the next season.
All right.
Except we got to go through Christmas Carol first, so we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But just keep that in the back.
I'm okay with that. I hope it's... actually, who do I hope it is?
Yeah, who do you hope it is?
Rory, I guess. I just feel like he's grown on me a little bit. But yeah, I wouldn't put Amy or the Doctor below him.
Well, you have to see. We'll have to watch Christmas Carol first.
Pretty sure it's going to be some cop-out thing where, like, they die, but there's, like, some loophole, or they come back, or, like, it's just some linguistic, like, thing.
I'm not saying anything. So, then they leave in the TARDIS, and yeah, that's how it ends. Like I said, there's a lot of things I really like about the story. I think it actually wraps up the season pretty well. I think it ties up all the episodes this season, pretty much all of them, into a nice little package. It ties up all the cracks in time nicely. I'm a little bothered about some of the questions that are left unanswered, only because they're left unanswered completely. Things like who blew up the TARDIS and why. Episode 2, I feel, is definitely weaker than Episode 1.
Yeah.
Although Episode 1, I feel, drags more than Episode 2. I feel like if they just reshuffled some of the things, it could work really well. Although the thing is, the cliffhanger at Episode 1 is so good that I don't know if you could change Episode 1 in any way without ruining it. And I actually don't have anything else to talk about in this episode. I'm going to just go over my notes one more time. I wrote, was that Adam Sandler? Because at the wedding, there was a guy, an extra, who looked a lot like Adam Sandler in the background.
I actually had a note for the wedding too. There's this part in the wedding where Amy's trying to remember the doctor and she's looking around. She's noticing like people wearing bow ties and suspenders. And I was like, please, for the love of God, show a fez.
Fezzes are cool. There is one final thing I wanted to talk about, which is that the doctor, when he's leaving Amy, he tells her we're all stories in the end. Just make it a good one, which is interesting. I think kind of ties into that thing that Keon was talking about, that the reboot is definitely more literary than the classic show ever was.
Yep.
Kind of talking about people's lives as being stories, whatever you consider a story to be. I think that's actually an interesting quote by the doctor, telling people that people's lives are kind of stories that get told through time and through generations and so on and so forth. And, other than that, this episode, interesting, was kind of just there, I guess, like in terms of plot and consequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said what I needed to say already. A lot of this stuff, I think, near the end didn't exactly fall into place in the way it potentially could have if they had had the proper time and planning to get this out in the way they wanted to.
Right. Well, so let's do a season retrospective
instead,
then.
Right.
I liked this season, actually.
Yeah,
there were a couple of questionable moments, I want to say. I wouldn't say there was really an episode that was like, man, that episode just brought the whole season down. I'm going to bring up a list of episodes just because I don't quite remember all of them. Beast Below, Victory of the Dogs were a little on the weaker side. Vampires of Venice as well. But I think overall, I think the season was pretty strong. Really strong effort for Moffat coming out with his first season here, I think. Really nice overarching plotline that I think was executed really well as well. We didn't see the cracks every week, but when we did, it was like...
Yeah,
well executed. It was subtle, but not so subtle that it was Bad Wolf or Torchwood, right?
Well, I mean, I had heard a lot about like the Moffat era and how divisive it was before watching this season, and I was somewhat prepared for the worst, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's not what I got. I really enjoyed this season, actually.
Yeah, I was looking back on it, and I really think season 6 and 7 are what people think about when they consider the divisive Moffat era. I think season 5 is pretty much universally well liked. I think series 8 through 10 they have their critics, but I think also are mostly well liked. I'd say majority like those. I think season 6 and 7 are the two that, when people say Moffat era is divisive, I think they're really pointing to season 6 and 7.
Now, here's the thing. Series 1, we had Rose, and she was great in that season.
Right.
Series 2, maybe not so much. Amy and Rory are still around as of this. They're coming back next season. Supposedly someone's going to die. But who knows if history's going to repeat itself here, if they're going to go the Rose route.
I don't know. I think that having two companions makes it a little more difficult to go the Rose route, so to speak. I think because you can split the work between the two of them, and it's more difficult to feel like one character is being overused or worn out because you've got two characters.
That didn't stop them from
rooting
Ian, Barbara, Susan, where it was like Susan, Ian doing everything.
But again, the reboot is a little more technically polished.
Yeah, a little more.
And also, Ian, Barbara, and Susan was a little questionable. But Nissa, Tegan, and Turlo, when they got there, they did it decently well. I still think it was a little weaker than the two-person TARDIS, but I think having more people will make it a little more difficult to go the Rose route.
Yeah, well, I mean, according to what you just said, someone's going to die.
No spoilers. So, wrapping up here, we're moving into the Christmas special next week once again with A Christmas Carol. I don't remember what season it's produced as part of, so I don't know where I'm going to place it on the episode guide that I haven't updated in 3 months, but I'm going to update soon. But we do have emails, actually, two. Like we said, one from a regular correspondent on our Blake 7 podcast, if you listen to that. RG has emailed us here. We have tentative plans for RG actually to join us for an episode of Trust Your Doctor. That's kind of behind the scenes in the works, I mean. So she split the email. One email is about Pandorica Opens, one's about Big Bang. I'm going to just read them straight through, and then we'll talk about what we want, and we can end the episode. Okay, fellas, you wanted some Doctor Who mail. Here you go. Pandorica opens. Poor Vincent, he literally suffers for his art. River Song is back. Any episode with River Song is a good episode. I disagree with that one. I have a prop of her screwdriver, which I think is one of the best Sonics. This episode is greatest hits of season 5. Cyberhead is the best Medusa head. I never noticed before how much the door to Amy's house looks like the door to the TARDIS.
Yeah, I noticed that too, actually, in this episode.
I didn't, actually, so that I'm going to have to go back and look at that. Rory returns as a Roman. I enjoy the gag about Amy not remembering him. The gun hands are a throwback to the first episode of New Who, where the sharp dummies had gun hands, which in turn is a throwback to the Third Doctor serial, where sharp dummies had gun hands. 2 Third Doctor stories, actually. This is my favorite version of the New Who TARDIS. It suits the 11th Doctor's personality with all his bibs and bars made out of repurposed Earth equipment. This is my second favorite New Who TARDIS. My favorite is the 12th Doctor's, actually. The way it's lit in gold during this episode is gorgeous. Matt Smith's look of horror as the Doctor is locked in the Pandorica is perfect. Will he get out? Stay brilliant, RG. And then this email about Big Bang. Hello, TYD Centurions. Here are my thoughts on the Big Bang. Whoever is supposed to be looking after the garden at Amy's house scores an F. You probably already know this, but the girl playing the young Amelia Pond is Karen Gillan's cousin. She has blue eyes and Karen's are hazel. I think she does a great job.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. We forgot to mention that. We mentioned it in the 11th hour, but we should have mentioned it again here.
And they actually get to share screen time in this.
Yeah.
Rory is all kinds of awesome in this story, and Peter Moffat is all kinds of weird. Everything gets wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. River's song is in this episode, which automatically makes it a good episode. Again, I disagree. I love the bit with the Fez. It's my favorite River quote.
Oh, we didn't mention the part where they, Amy and River, look at the Fez, and Amy just grabs it and throws it, and River shoots it.
Yeah, River blows it up. Right then, I have questions, but number 1, what is this? What in the name of sanity have you got in the head? And a decent reply from the Doctor. It's a Fez. I wear a Fez now. Fezes are cool. Leading to the lovely reaction where Amy throws said Fez in the air and River shoots it into smithereens. Take note of the Dalek asking for mercy, which we did. This is one of my favorite 11th Doctor bits. Legs, yes. Bow tie, cool. I can buy a Fez. When he comes back to life, that is. Any wedding that River Song attends is a good wedding. Again, disagree with that. They have given Amy Pond green eyes in her close-ups because all the cool kids have green eyes. I don't quite understand how the TARDIS comes back, but that's Stephen Moffat for you. Amy remembers it and brings it back, same way she remembered her parents. Amy and Rory head off into the sunset, and that's it for season 5. If you thought that was complicated, wait until you watch season 6. Stay brilliant. RG. There was one thing I actually wanted to mention that this email brought up that I didn't mention. River Song is really cryptic about whether she's married or not. The Doctor asks, are you married? And she says yes. And then the Doctor says, oh, did you answer yes because you thought I was asking you to marry me? Or did you answer yes because you're actually married? And she says yes, which is an inclusive or statement. And that's something that actually will be picked up later on, thankfully. And I just wanted to bring that up because it's important to the whole River Song arc that we get. But other than that, thank you very much for emailing us, RG. It's always nice to get correspondence from anyone on either of our podcasts, and we appreciate you sending us some stuff about Doctor Who. It's always nice to hear
any
other
of our
perspectives.
podcasts. Don't forget Triple Play.
We get correspondence on that from Sergeant Drano.
Yeah. And Stephen.
And Stephen. So if you would like to join the correspondence, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on season 5 and Stephen Moffat. Where is he going next? You tell me.
Where's the wild ride taking us next?
I want to get off Stephen Moffat's wild ride. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast. And follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Christmas Carol. But until then, the end.